So you want to create good habits now. So a few specific points. I think variable expenses are much better than fixed expenses in terms of your spending. We all live in this world of Spotify's $10 and Planet Fitness is $10. Everything's HBO is $10, right? If you join, a yoga studio, et cetera, you pay for each class. I think that stuff is good to spend your money that way. I know it's hard to cancel a lot of these things. We forget the password, we don't realize we had it, et cetera. But you can get rid of variable costs. Fixed costs are problematic. You're stuck with them. And I would also encourage you to think that most of your expenses, particularly when you leave here, are actually quite variable. They aren't necessarily variable every month like, the Spotify bill is, but they're variable over time. Your rent is variable. Even though you signed a lease, you can move in a year. You can choose to get somewhere cheaper, have more roommates. You have choices. Your car, if you have one, is variable. You can get rid of your car, you can trade down, et cetera. So think about your expenses as variable, and you have a decision to make every month or every year about whether you want to keep spending on that. You have some option value, as I would only use the term with MBA students. You have some option value on these things, and options are valuable if you learn that in finance. You're going to get windfalls in your life. You're going to get tax refunds. You may get a bonus at work. You may get lucky and inherit money. You're going to get some windfalls. Those of you who get a job and you get paid every other week, which I think is the best way to get paid, you probably know this already, because 2 months of the year you get a third check. So if you get paid bi-weekly, I would encourage you to think of that third check twice a year as a windfall. You need to save these windfalls. If you get in the habit of spending the tax refund, that's what you go to Cancun with. You're making a grievous error over time. It's not sustainable. You have to figure out a way to save these. Similarly, because you all came to SOM and you're going to get great jobs and you have great careers, your income is going to go up over your lifetime. There's no question about that. You can't let your expenses follow your income on the same path. That's a recipe for disaster financially. You have to figure out a way to have the slope of your expenses be flatter than the slope of your income. Because if they track in parallel, you're never going to save enough money. The fourth one is probably the most important and the one for which I have the least guidance for you. I see this all the time. There's tremendous social pressure to spend money, particularly when you're young. When you get older, you've figured out a way to work through this. But when you're your age, it's really hard. And in a place like this, or even when you go to work, when you leave here, it feels like everybody's rich except for you. And everybody's going to Cancun on spring break. And what are you going to do? And it's a really hard problem. I don't have an answer for it other than if you let it take over your spending, you're going to be screwed. You're going to be in deep trouble. You're never going to dig out of that hole. It's really challenging. The best advice I can give you, which is not great, what I find sometimes helps is socializing the feeling you have about this and that you're not actually that rich. And you'll discover in your peer group, I'm guessing, that a lot of people are really glad you said something because they're feeling the same pressure also. And then the last is behavioral economics, which I don't know if you study here, but you're all probably familiar with it. I would leverage some insights from that. So things like, actually my daughter who went here, she does this great. She uses these mental accounting buckets. So in a lot of banks allow you to create separate savings accounts. You can give them a name. So you can have You can have a savings account that is whatever it is you want to spend money on, shoes or Cancun or down payment on the house or wedding. So mental accounting is this notion of putting things into buckets to spend, and when you have the money, you spend it. But you know, this money is dedicated for this and that, this money is for that purpose. I think it can be very effective for some people. Back when, long before you were here, but when I was young, the department stores had these Christmas club accounts or layaway plans. You may have heard of these layaway plans. So when you wanted to buy a new winter jacket, you went to the department store and you gave them $10 every week. And when you had enough money to buy the jacket, you went in and bought it. It's very clever. It worked really well. So you bought it after you paid for it, rather than before you had the money. This is the same idea. I would just encourage everybody, I know this sounds silly, just hit the pause button before you spend any money. And the reason is the next bullet. This is my point. Saving money, not spending it, gives you option value. And if you learned in finance that options are worth a lot of money. Once you spend the money, the option value's gone. But if you haven't spent it, you always can spend it later. That's the beauty of an option. And then I would also, I know this sounds a little silly, money, particularly when you're swiping a debit card all the time, no one even carries cash. I'm guessing half of you don't even have cash in your pocket now, maybe all of you. Money's really abstract, right? You don't even feel the effect of it. So I would encourage you, when you're thinking about buying something, when you're thinking about spending money, convert the currency to hours worked. So just figure out your rough after-tax hourly rate, whatever it is. You know, you're thinking of spending, whatever, $500 on a TV or something. And just to make the numbers easy for me, let's say you're making $50 an hour on an after-tax basis. So instead of saying $500, say, is that worth 10 hours of work? And if you think it's worth a day and a quarter of your life to buy the TV, then maybe you should buy it. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy it, but I think hours work is much more concrete for people than swiping with a debit card or running up a credit card balance.